It's good to be here with you today. I'd like to begin by thanking my collaborators, my mentors, Dr. Daniel Martin, Dr. Philip Zimbardo, and my friend Omer Kornitz, who built our first pilot website. So, my name is Yotam. I'm a postdoc here at Stanford with CCARE, which is the Center for Compassion and Altruism Research and Education. My background, I got my doctorate in clinical psychology at Palo Alto University and Stanford University. I was mainly trained as a psychotherapist. It was a very tremendous experience. Out of that experience, mainly two things emerged. The first is that I absolutely love doing psychotherapy. I consider that the most special, maybe honorable practice that I've ever engaged in. I want to do that for many more years. My work has been mainly with people from poor, lower economical kind of background, people with a lot of trauma, and that's work that I hope to do for many more years. The second conclusion that emerged has a hint of frustration in it. And the frustration is that we know psychotherapy is great, we know it's helpful. The feasibility of actually giving millions and millions of people the kind of help that we want to share with them from clinical experts, that's kind of hard actually. It's hard to share all of the wisdom, all of the pearls of what we know about psychotherapy with so many people. That put me on this additional trajectory of trying to basically share that kind of wisdom with more people in ways that are a little bit more scalable, that can be transmitted to more populations. And that's the topic of the talk I'm going to give today. It's basically how can we use the internet, how can we use the web to share these lessons of well-being, healing, compassion with more populations. So let's kind of begin and see where we go with that. So the overview, this program basically comes from my training, my experience in the last 5 or 6 years of working with people in a psychotherapy context. I think my primary two goals in working with people would probably be, the first one would be helping people make contact with what's alive in them, helping people connect to the things that are most special, unique, idiosyncratic, singular inside each human being, helping them make contact with that and then kind of cultivating and helping them grow into the person they wish to be. And then the second thing would be facilitating or helping people reach that insight, that engaging in compassion, compassion for themselves and for other people around them, is actually a very powerful agent of healing for themselves as well as for their environment. And these two principles are kind of what's leading the presentation I'll be giving. So let's see, what do we got here? And this is pretty much a three-part intervention. So the first part, making contact, developing coherent values, basically helping people develop a narrative about what they care about the most, about the human being they wish to be, how they want to treat others. And in a few minutes, I'll show you what that looks like. The second piece, tracking, engaging in caring behaviors, giving people a framework, a platform, an opportunity to choose and then connect with different types of caring activities, compassionate activities. And the third piece, monitoring that, self-awareness, being able to present people with their own data. We have a standardized program that's customized and individualized to each person's experience. And in a few moments, you'll see what that looks like. Let me say something about compassion-driven interventions for a moment. If we think about compassion, we go back to many ancient cultures, Tibetan being one of them. But across human tradition, compassion has always been something that's been of interest to many societies. And the core principle of compassion would be attunement to the suffering of oneself, attunement to the suffering of other people, and having this desire, this motivation, this interest in relieving this suffering. And I'd like to suggest, and I'm generalizing a little bit, but I'd like to suggest that most Western psychology approaches today geared towards well-being have a bigger emphasis on the interest in reducing a person's own personal suffering. And they have less of an interest in reducing the suffering of others. That's a good thing. The question is, can we do more? I think this visual metaphor of Super Mario might be kind of helpful to us. I don't know if you guys ever play video games. You go through the little arcade and you grab hold of, the golden banana, the purple peach. Then you get the invincibility stars over there, right? You get surrounded by this force field, this shield that protects you. You become resilient to the adversity of life. Nothing touches you. You become very strong. And I want to suggest that maybe this is something that most psychology approaches are trying to help us with. Develop personal resilience and the ability to not be negatively impacted by the adversity and difficulties that we go through with life. I think these are fine goals, and we should absolutely do these things. The question that emerges is, can we try and do more? Can we try and offer a more comprehensive system of healing that attends to people's personal suffering and also the suffering of people around us? So when we think about this force field, we think about this bubble of resilience, if you will. Wouldn't it be nice if that went both ways? If people coming in contact with the kind of force field that we're talking about would also benefit themselves? If we can help people get better, increase their well-being, as well as increase positive social, emotional climate around us? I think maybe one of the most profound or helpful examples of that is coming into contact with people who have been practicing compassion meditation for many years. When you spend time with people like that, you notice this inner strength, the resilience, the ability to cope with different life circumstances. And you also notice something more. You notice how it's going both ways. You notice that these people have a tremendous amount of kindness and compassion and care and interest in helping the people around them. And by the way, if you're interested in learning more about compassion training, I want to encourage you to check out our website at CCARE, which is ccare.stanford.edu. You can check out our Stanford compassion training, and there's lots of other great information about compassion in terms of education, research, etc. Going back to this online program that I'll be sharing with you about, this is basically another way of trying to increase well-being, increase compassion for self and other. It's synergistic. It can basically be standing alone or supplementing other approaches that are trying to reach everybody the same goal together, which is increasing well-being, increasing compassion for self and other. And let's go into that a little bit more. Highlights. What are we trying to do here? So we want to use evidence-based, scientifically driven social psychology and clinical psychology kind of principle in order to increase well-being and compassion. Basically, nutshell, we want to provide participants with a very easy way of engaging with caring behaviors and tracking to see how they're impacted by that, to monitor their own well-being. We're giving people their own data, as you'll see in a moment. Last, coolest part, we've already begun. So basically, our first pilot has been launched, and we'll have several more pilots be launched in the next week or two. Walkthrough. What does it look like in a nutshell? So basically, it's a brief online intervention. You would be spending maybe 5 minutes per day logging your experiences online. We have values clarification, connecting with the values that are most important for you, connecting with the behaviors that are most meaningful, most important for you. You log your behaviors and levels of well-being every day, and you get presented with this cool graph that I'll be showing you in a moment that are basically letting you know how your behaviors correlate with your well-being. Let me show you the first portion of the three-piece intervention, values work. Self-affirmation, it's a very fascinating theory. It's been around since the 80s, created by Claude Steele. In essence, self-affirmation was created as a way of helping people support or boost their sense of self, strengthen people's sense of self. It's been referred to as the psychology of self-defense, and for good reason. The kind of data that comes up with self-affirmation is really remarkable. You can see that by engaging with these practices that I'll share about in a moment, you can reduce ruminative thinking, stress, improving health outcomes, reducing defensiveness. It's just really remarkable what comes out of that intervention. What do you actually do? Very simple. You basically give people lists of values and inviting them to kind of log the values that they care about the most. You have people journal about the values that they care about the most. Personally, I'm in love with this intervention. The reason is I see it as a celebration of human spirit. The fact that people benefit in these ways just because they have the opportunity to make contact with values, with things that they care about a lot, the things that are salient for them, says good things for humanity, I believe. This idea that if we help each person connect with what's alive in them, with what's most meaningful for them, their well-being will increase. Kind of a beautiful thing. So we have our first piece. We have connection to values. We have this notion of how can we help people make meaning and narrative about what they care about the most, and then we want to kind of have them engage with caring behaviors. Thing is, how are we going to get them to do it? If only we had a behavioral program with 3-4 decades of solid data behind it to offer as a platform. And I'll get to that program in a moment. Let me show you what the values work actually looks like on the website. So basically, this is what we give people on the website. We give them a list of these caring behaviors, and they basically rank the different behaviors that they can go through. Another opportunity that I think is really important is helping people basically come up with more values. People are always giving the opportunity to connect with additional values that they care about. This is important because when we have computer programs, oftentimes we have the risk of standardization, that we kind of overlook people's unique traits. Here, people always get to add the things that they care about. Another nice piece is journaling. People get to journal about the values that they care about the most, and people always also have the opportunity every day to journal about their daily experiences through expressive writing. So they connect with the values they care about the most. They use evidence-based practices to do other forms of expressing writing to increase awareness and well-being. And now, what I promised before, the behavioral program. So we have the values piece in place right now, and now we want to connect people with caring and engaging behaviors. So let's see what that looks like. I want to tell you about behavioral activation. That comes from us, from the domain of clinical psychology and behavioral psychotherapy practice. The previous intervention came to us from social psychology and is considered one of the most potent interventions in the field of social psychology. This one is a nice supplement. It's a very powerful exercise that comes from behavioral therapy. Behavioral activation has been around since the early 70s. What is it in a nutshell? We give people an opportunity to come up with the behaviors that they care about the most and basically engage in those behaviors, noticing how these behaviors impact their well-being. Traditionally, behavioral activation has offered people an opportunity to engage with self-care behaviors, enjoyable activities, going for a walk in the park, reading my favorite book, enjoying the meal I like the most, getting a massage, all types of self-care and self-soothing behaviors that have been well correlated with better well-being. Another nice element that we see is that actually this is not just for clinical populations. Some studies with non-clinical populations also indicate to us that engaging with behavioral activation, engaging with enjoyable self-care kind of activities actually increases well-being, increases happiness. So these are good news. Okay, so we know that enjoyable and self-care activities are good for us. There's a lot of data to back that up. So that takes care of this self-directed component. The question is, can we broaden that? Well, let's see. Nice thing about altruism is that it happens to increase people's well-being. Engaging in voluntarism, engaging in caring for others, taking care of people that are around us actually helps us. The data, again, increasing happiness, satisfaction, social connectedness, overall psychological resilience. These are some of the things that shore up when you invite people to engage in voluntarism activity or caring for others type of activity. So this is kind of an interesting piece, and maybe you can kind of guess where this is going by now. We have the behavioral activation framework, which is focused on self-care activities. We know a lot of data comes from altruistic engagement, compassion for other kind of engagement that increases people's well-being. So we've done something pretty simple that hasn't really happened before in these terms. We're keeping all of the self-care activities from the behavioral activation framework, and then we're doubling the direction. We're helping people with this platform engage with other directed activities as well. So now you have a program that entails both self-care and altruistic activities. And this comprises CBA, compassion behavioral activation. So let me say some more about what that would look like. I could make up a reason for why it's there again, but the reason I just couldn't resist. So let's see. Now we're getting to our third component. The first component was making contact with our values, the things that are most important and salient for us. The second component was engaging with caring activities, and I'll show you exactly what that looks like in a moment. The third component is this component of self-monitoring, self-awareness, another form of mindfulness, if you will. Basically, every day people log their levels of well-being on these 6 different graphs: connection with personal values, connection with others, happiness, satisfaction, productivity, sadness. And then we can see how the behaviors they engage with, showing people their own data, correlate with these different graphs and domains of well-being. The important thing I want to emphasize about these graphs, about these domains that we've chosen, is that there is absolutely nothing magical about them. These are just the 6 that we thought would be a really good place to start with. You can have a domain about resilience, about stress, about being excited, about being tired, etc., and see how your behaviors correlate. It actually doesn't stop with self-report kind of measures. You can have psychophysiology measures, daily measurements of heart rate variability, blood pressure, any form of psychophysiology measurement you would want to have. You can basically log into the computer, check in with people's well-being, and then see how it correlates with the kind of behaviors or activities that people have decided to engage with. So again, we have a very modular and flexible intervention that can be used in different ways. Another neat component of these graphs. What do? Well, people can view their daily level of subjective well-being in these 6 domains that I've just shared with you. People can recognize the contribution of every single behavior they've done to that particular domain. This is probably one of my favorite pieces. Is every 2 weeks we send participants feedback emails. And the feedback emails give them several things. First of all, participants receive accumulated graphs. So if people log their behaviors every day, and I'll show you in a minute what that looks like, once these behaviors get logged, the accumulated graphs actually get condensed every 2 weeks, every month, every 2 months, and people see what that looks like over time. The second piece, which is, I think, really neat, is that we can give people their top 5 behaviors for each domain. So each domain of well-being that I've just showed you, you get an email, and that email gives you the top 5 behaviors that are best correlated with this domain of well-being. That basically means that people can go ahead and do more of these activities and enhance their lives by engaging with the activities that make them feel the most satisfied or most happy with that particular domain. Another neat thing along the line of data collection, imagine doing this program with 10, 20,000 people. You get data from huge populations, and then you learn about what are the specific correlates of each human behavior with various forms of well-being domains. Let's see what that looks like a little bit closer in terms of the graph. So we got here the behaviors, and then we have the values. Say something about these lists of behaviors. So we have behaviors, as you can see up there, that are focused on self-care. We have behaviors that are focused on other care. Just like the values, there is always an opportunity to add more components. There's always an opportunity to add more behaviors. So we're offering people a list. I think it's around 40 behaviors focused on self-care and compassion for others. But you can go beyond that. People can always add more behaviors. And that's the component of, on the one hand, standardizing a program, on the other hand, making it customized to each person's experience. And it's true, I'm standing here endorsing compassion. I want people to be kind to themselves or others. But if you want to add a behavior, kind of like kick the cat, be mean to my spouse, you can actually do that, and it's up to you. And then later that day, you're going to log your level of well-being. And we know, because there have been a lot of study about many populations, that kindness is actually better for your well-being than meanness. So people can experiment and log any behavior under the sun they wish, and they get presented with their own data. And they see how they've been impacted by that. And what we've been learning so far with our pilots, people are enjoying engaging with these compassionate behaviors. When you invite people to connect with what's most salient for them, what I've found, and I've actually done this kind of work with people that were involved with gangs in the prison system, traumatized soldiers, people are actually eager to make contact with goodness. Sounds a little bit naive. It's also true. That's what I've been able to see through my work with people dealing with anger issues, etc. The second piece, pretty straightforward. People basically log their connection to various domains of well-being. And let's see what it looks like in terms of the graphs. What happens, really? So every day, people get presented with these graphs, and you can scroll down and see all of these graphs. The really neat part is you can hover over each specific bar. So basically, if I'm kind of going through this, if I have my mouse, hovering here would give me the list of behaviors, hovering here. So you see here, for this bar, I went with my mouse here and I have these 5 behaviors that I engage in, and this is my level of connection with others. So going through this every day kind of gives you the opportunity to see the story of your life through your behaviors, your experiences, and your different domains of well-being. Let's see even more what that looks like. Every day you get presented with these 6 graphs. So this again gives you the story, very elaborate, personal, detailed story, customized to your own personal experience about the behaviors and your domains of well-being. The other piece, what we send you every 2 weeks, every month, every 2 months, is basically an opportunity to see what behaviors make you feel the best. We send you these 5 behaviors, and you basically get to learn about yourself. And you also get to always experiment, add new behaviors. How is that impacting my life? So you're cultivating this kind of ongoing awareness to your experiences and your behaviors. I can emphasize another point that's really important, is we constantly thread this kind of narrative. We constantly invite people to make contact between their values and their behaviors. So in doing this kind of work, we're basically telling people, constantly be aware of what your personal values are. I'm not interested in telling you what they should be. I'm interested in you finding out for yourself what values you care about the most. Once you've had that, once you've clarified your values, make it fit with your behaviors. That's a pretty good recipe for happiness, for having compassion with self and other, we see. When people are connecting what they care about the most to their daily activities, it's a good recipe for a person's well-being as well as their surrounding environment. What else we got here? So let me tell you a little bit about the structure of this program. Like I said before, it's very modular, it's very flexible. It can work in multiple fashions. Let me show you. The first one, it can stand alone. It can be on a website. It can be on a smartphone application. The first pilot we've done with Dr. Martin's group is basically a standalone intervention. So we don't talk with people about the program. The website is completely self-explanatory. People log in. There's a 5-minute video. That's all you need. Brief instructions. The program is very, very simple to use. It's very easy to use, and you can use it as a completely 100% standalone intervention. It can also be a supplement. It can supplement individual, group therapy. It can supplement pretty much any classroom, any group setting you could imagine under the sun. In the spring quarter, we'll show some more. We'll be doing it with business students, organizational behavior, psychology students, with a meditation class in Hong Kong. We'll say some more about that in a moment. Last component, it can be synergistic and enhancing a very wonderful program called Mentorum, created by Dr. Dan Martin, who's a very brilliant guy. Mentorum basically is also a really neat program that can be flexible in its own way. It can happen in college campuses where you connect students with alumni. It can happen in workplace environments where you connect people at the workplace with their seniors that could basically offer them wisdom and help them advance in life. We're exploring some new ideas. For instance, in a mental health context, in life mental health agencies, the peer counseling component. Can we help people connect with those who are suffering and basically creating communities? So again, the idea with these types of programs, and that's the other risk I think that sometimes runs with technology, and that's a fear that I have, it's about technology isolating people, technology decreasing connectedness. The kind of program that I'm speaking with you about, the kind of program that Mentorum is using technology to help people make contact with each other, is using technology to create communities in the real world. So ladies and gentlemen, the following announcement might result in some dizziness or weakness in the knees. I ask that you brace yourself, but I'm very proud and honored to tell you that actually, yes, no joke, Dr. Dan Martin, the creator of Mentorum, is in the room with us today. So this is he. So this is basically our final slide. I just want to tell you where we are at with this program. We have upcoming pilot applications in the spring. That's going to happen with Cal State East Bay, with classrooms that Dan is teaching. that's going to happen in Hong Kong with 5 different classrooms in an international high school. So we'll have classrooms that are focusing on humanities and action kind of training. We'll have a meditation class. We'll have a Bible study class looking at people's values. So we'll be testing this program as a supplement and basically to enrich the learning material of the class by getting teenagers to make contact with their values, caring behaviors, see how they're impacted by that. And the third one for this quarter is going to be the Stanford public health educators. And these are the people who are going to go out on campus later and offer public health education to more students. So that would be integrated into their training. Some future applications, potential organizations we're speaking with Department of Veterans Affairs and specifically the National Center for PTSD, which is in charge of one of the biggest producers of web-based and smartphone kind of psychology applications for veterans and soldiers that came back from war. So we're considering doing that with them. And my favorite part is to say Universidad Juárez Autónoma de Tabasco, which is where Dan is going to be teaching this summer, and we're going to be exploring other opportunities to do that with them as well. Last, we're very open to discussion. This is a new program. We have the website up and running. At this point, we're basically looking to learn from people, getting feedback from people, as well as basically harvesting more data and coming up with ways to share this with more populations, and hopefully we would be able to benefit a lot of people by doing this. So this is the nutshell of this program, and thanks for the opportunity to share.
Have you considered augmenting the narrative of values and journaling with images and pictures?
So that's one of the things we're hoping for in the future, and I'd be excited to have an exchange about that. Yeah, basically, especially the web piece, the more animated it's going to be, the more visualized we can make, maybe even the values. Maybe we can help people make contact with images and values that fit the best for them. So the question is, would there be a different impact for the program when it's practiced in different places or different settings? Would that be? The workplace. So the answer is yes, I would love to learn about it. Like I said, we're beginning. We think that this could also be something that would be good for workplace engagement, ideally producing more well-being and also more harmony at the workplace. When we think about volunteer organizations, perhaps, there's some large organizations that could potentially benefit from this extra opportunity for people to connect with what they care about, engaging with caring activities that they already do. So yeah, we would love to learn more about it.
How do you evaluate the successfulness of such application?
Right. So basically the way that we evaluate it is with pre-post measures. We have people rate their levels of well-being on multiple scales. Some of them are going to be depression, anxiety, stress. We evaluate people on measures of compassion, how much they have kindness towards themselves, how much they have kindness towards their others. We have scales that look at prejudice. We see if people going through these experiences have prejudice or negative perception of people, for instance, that come from minority populations. We're curious to see when people go through compassion programs, if their level of prejudice, of racism, if you will, if that would go down. I can tell you that other programs I've been involved with related to war zone children in Israel, Jewish and Arab kids, when we have them go through programs that combine stress reduction and these values of shared humanity, what we see is the children become less racist. Before they go through the program, there's a lot of hatred between the Jewish and Arab children. We teach the teachers how to work with the kids. Once they've gone through that program, which by the way is called Erase Stress Pro-Social, once they've gone through that program, the racism, the hatred, the prejudice is lowered by the self-report of the kids themselves. So that's one way to evaluate it.
Heard about the long-term effects of this.
We wonder too. Yeah.
There's interventions that make a difference right after the intervention, but do you follow up with the, will you be following up 6 months and a year and 5 years?
If I were to stand here and share with you about my hopes and dreams, the answer is yes. So this program, we would like to do it, well, like we said, we have just begun piloting it. And the program is usually probably going to be around a 2-month program, 8 weeks. So we would have pre-post measures right before the program. At the very ending of the program, ideally we'd have 3 months, 6-month follow-up, etc. This also has to do with funding, but if we can do longitudinal studies, that would be ideal. I think maybe the reason why we would be able to do it is this program is extremely cheap to implement. The website is already up. We can create groups for any population and run a study. People log in and do the pre-post measures through the website. So the evaluation process is very easy, very cost-effective. Please.
I just have a question about the involvement of Zimbardo in that. It surprised me when I saw his name.
Okay.
So I don't know whether you can share the story or maybe most of you know.
Sure.
But how did he switch from some research into how people behave in prisons, basically, to research into compassion?
Right.
Makes sense, but I'm just curious about the anecdote.
Okay, yeah. I've been working with Phil for the last 4 or 5 years. In the last, I think maybe 10 years, maybe more, his focus has been pro-social engagement and heroism. To me, Phil Zimbardo is a person that's actually devoted his life to encouraging pro-social engagement. He's on the board with CCARE. He's part of the Compassion organization. I think the main reason for why he focused on evil behavior, or the prison study that you mentioned, is really to see how can we get people to resist negative situational forces, how can we get people to engage in pro-social ways, in compassion, in heroic behaviors, and doing good for other people. So the link is very strong, actually.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.